Right now, I'm going to introduce Wayne Coste. We are very pleased to have Wayne Coste here presenting to everyone. Wayne has a Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering from the University of Connecticut. He is a licensed professional engineer with over 45 years of experience as an engineer. For 6 years, he volunteered with Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, working on the presenters team, the board of directors, and he was a congressional outreach team leader with Architects and Engineers as well. Wayne is the founder of the Truth Outreach Incorporated, which sponsored the 9/11 Truth Action Project, or 9/11 TAP. After several years of investigating the Pentagon damage, he concluded that only a large plane impact could have caused the damage. So what Wayne will say to us today is he will examine the details of the damage to the Pentagon, including the exterior wall, the internal damage, and the inner C-ring wall. He will also look at the debris and its distribution. He will explain in particular how the various proposed mechanisms of destruction succeed or fail in explaining the observations. So please help me welcome this hero to our movement, Wayne Coste.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. In light of the fact that this is an investigation of the evidence using what we call the scientific method, I want to say that if I say something wrong, make a wrong assumption, go too far, please feel free to correct me and let me know. I also want to let everyone here know that I welcome the critique that Barbara Honegger has just prepared and has been distributing here. Please feel free to review it, and please feel free to find out what's right and what's right and wrong. See it as a counterpoint. I will tell you, though, there is one error, one misstatement that embarrasses me that she's identified. I won't tell you what it is, but you got to find it yourself. The first thing I want to do is talk about the blast-resistant wall, the E-ring wall. It is a very significant piece. What the refurbishment of the E-ring was primarily designed to do, besides modernizing it, was to put in a blast-resistant wall. The blast-resistant wall was basically blast-resistant glass to protect against the incidents like the Khobar Tower, in which the explosion shattered the glass, and the projectiles, those are the projectiles that did the most damage to the personnel inside. So they put the blast-resistant windows in. They were supported by 4-inch steel tubes with fingers that are holding them up. You can see kind of the fingers, the little horizontal things that are kind of pointed to in this video. They're also bolted from one floor to the next. So they're like window frame, whole entire frames that are put in place and then bolted using threaded rods down to the next level down. That's how they use that for lateral support. It was designed against an exterior truck bomb, not an incoming plane. Here is a post-impact picture of about columns 2, 3, and 4. You can see one of the window frames, and I've highlighted the fingers so you can see what they look like. This is typical. If we go on the inside, this is a second floor window. You can see the glass is melted, and if you look on the right-hand side, you can see the finger that's there. You can also see the infill brick. There's no steel reinforced concrete anyplace in this entire path, as was mentioned before, going from the E-ring all the way to the C-ring. It was just the 1942 era steel and rebar columns that was obstructing the path of the plane. When I used to bemoan the fact that the wall had collapsed and it was a pile of junk, and you can't see anything. There's nothing there. There's no information. But that is not true once you look. Once you know what you're looking for, you can identify. First of all, we got the limestone facing. We got brick under the limestone. We've got the 4-inch steel tubes that are clearly visible. You see the blast-resistant window. It's all there. It's just kind of like not in the right place, the original place. So it's all there. You can see it, and you can see that there's no steel reinforced concrete, no concrete at all in this area. The only place there's any concrete is in the stairwell. Appears to be in the stairwell, which is that blank wall on the right-hand side at the right side of the collapse. So a little bit of orientation. We're going to be talking about the heliport, of course, and debris is going to be found north of the heliport. We're also going to be talking about the Gouge retaining wall, which you've heard about and you've seen already, the diesel generator trailer, and the tree in front of column 16AA. We're also going to be talking about two specific columns and others, column 9AA, which I pointed to, and then column 19AA. And you might say, why am I, these aren't batteries, why am I using AAs? Well, it's because there is, the first column row in the Pentagon is column row A, but there's a section that jets out, and I call it a bay window, and that extra column row on the outside is called AA. That's the one that was impacted first by the plane and is where a lot of the visible damage actually is on this, on these slides. This is going to be a little hard to see. I'm not sure I should have put it in, but this is showing you where column row A is. You're looking at the column row, the columns from the top. This is column row A. I've got the tree in front of column 16AA. This is row AA, and I'm going to just highlight a couple of columns we're going to talk about. Column 9A, which is in the second row, the Benton Bode column 9AA. There's a column that is severed and hanging called 10A, and then there's two that are at the right side of the plane impact area, 18AA and 19AA. So those are just giving you a little bit of orientation. And again, we've got the generator, diesel generator trailer, the retaining wall, and the tree in front of column 16. I'm going to be talking about the tree at column 16. The tree was there, photographed in many, many places, but then it disappeared from memory. Once 9/11 happened, no one even knew it was there. It wasn't until I saw must have been about the 20th time I saw the comment that, oh, there's a stump. What stump? What's a stump doing there? So I looked into it. And over the course of 6 months or a year, I finally figured out what it was how I could explain what happened. Nothing is obvious with the photos that were there, but once you see it, once you can explain it, it's there. So here's the plane approaching. It's going to hit the tree and it's going to sever it between the fuselage and the right wing. The tree is going to get severed. The trunk is going to get whacked. It's going to effectively it's going to hit the wall and kind of bounce back through the plane, dragging along some parts of the plane. The moving mass of the trunk, the mass of the trunk is, with momentum, is going to be dragging the top of the tree and everything to the right, and it's going to end up about as far as column 5. And we can actually see that in some of the post-event photos. Here we can see the severed tree stump. Here I've highlighted it. So it looks like it's part of this other column that's hanging, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. Here's part of the debris. You have tree branches all over the area. And again, as was mentioned before, if you're going to plant the evidence, who's going to plant tree branches? Well, and they're all over and in various sizes. And from north of the heliport, looking back at the heliport, you can see many, many, many trees amongst the debris, the light debris. So the importance of the tree at column 16 is that the displacement can only be explained by a large plane impact. The movement of this tree can't be explained by the other theories. It's unexplainable by a cruise missile, exploding drone or other plane, unexplainable by pre-planted explosives inside or outside, unexplainable dropped bombs, unexplainable by north of Sitco flight path, that at least the version that hits the Pentagon, because it would pin the tree to the wall and not kick it to the north because it's got the wrong angle on it. So I'm going to go over the plane approach. You've actually seen this type of stuff with the other presenters. But what we see here is the plane's coming in. It's going to hit the diesel generator trailer. If you follow it, you go to the C-ring exit hole. Everything's kind of lines up, as you've seen before. But here's the diesel generator trailer getting hit. You've seen this before. I've got the small notch that David had just alluded to at the top. If you take a look at the left engine that now hits the ground at the retaining wall, takes out a gouge. You've seen this before. And I started to figure out, I started to accept the possibility of a large plane impact when I was putting together a series to describe the 4 different competing theories for what happened at the Pentagon, and my intention was to ridicule a large plane impact. It wasn't part of my vocabulary then. But the fact that the thing that made me stop was that this is 42 feet from where the generator engine, the area where the generator trailer would have hit. And that made me stop. Who could arrange this stuff and fake it this well? I had to at least start looking a little bit harder. And so this is the picture that got me going. This one in the dimensions. So I'm going to take a look at the plane impact onto the facade. First of all, we're going to see the right wing is going to be impacting above the second floor slab. The tree stump we're going to use to set the height of the wing spar between the fuselage and the right engine. The left wing is going to impact entirely below the second floor slab, and that's documented, memorialized by the bent and bowed column 9AA. And we're going to also look at this missing second floor front beam that's between columns 11 and 13 that was taken down, it appears, by the tail impact as the tail is dragged in. So here's the west facade showing the impact area. Here I've superimposed the plane. We're going to look at some of the key pieces or key sections of this photo a little bit closer so we can see just what it looks like. I took the width of a 757, put it in at the right angle. I reduced the angle a little bit, 52-degree angle. Reduced it a little bit to account for the yaw rotation that we'll talk about a little bit later. And so here's the shattered tree stump being used to set this part of the image for the wing between the fuselage and the right engine. On the very right-hand side, what you see is there are some bashed-in columns and knocked away limestone that sets kind of really the height of the wing at column 18 at the intersection of the slab, column 19 about a foot and a half or so above, and column 20 about 3 feet or so. Column 21 is just missed, or is missed, and so that's where I determined the end of the plane would be. So on the right side, what we're going to see is there's bashed-in columns on 18, 19, and 20, evidence of a large momentum impact, and again, it can't be explained by exterior explosives, interior explosives, cruise missiles, and as a further comment, both engines' impacts are approximately horizontal, so there's no seismic activity as the engines are, and the plane is being, the energy is being absorbed column by column over some time. Here's column 19. This is bashed in. When I started to look at this, I said, well, why hasn't anyone else been talking about this like as the major piece of evidence? Take a look at this bashed in column 19. It's clearly been hit by something. It's clearly bent. Something dramatic has happened here. Here's another view of it. You can actually see how far it's been pushed in, and you can see the rebar is still attached to it. And then on the left-hand side, you can see column 18, which has not only been squashed and bashed against the slab and destroyed in that way, it's also pushed to the left. Here you can see that it's been pushed to the left, a couple of feet, a foot and a half or so at the top. And you can, on the inset, you can actually see the spaghetti that looks like you can actually see the rebar is pushed to the north. This indicates that it's a pivot point for the right engine. Now let's go to the left-hand side. The plane impacts the facade. The left wing impacts the middle of the first floor between column 9AA, which is the last impacted column, and it's not destroyed because the plane is decelerated. It's the light end of the wing tip, and so the column is able to actually resist it, and the wing then has to rotate around it. And the damage to this column can't be explained by interior explosives, exterior explosives, or again, a cruise missile event. So here's column 9AA inset at the height of the wing, about halfway up about midway between the ground slab and the second floor slab, and is bowed in and not destroyed. Here it is. You can't see the bow-in part here, but right next to it is a steel window frame that's got those little fingers on it. Those little fingers used to point out towards the lawn. to hold the window frame in. But in this case here, they're rotated about 120 degrees. So something has come in and rotated it. And it's direct evidence, as near as I can see, of the left wing being wrapping itself around and being dragged in. And I'll show you kind of an animation of, as best I can do with PowerPoint, for what this looks like. So here's the west facade impact area with another composite photo. Just to kind of put this in context here, this is just a different scale. Everything kind of lines up here. We've got at 19 AA, we're up here at the crushed in area, crosses at column 18 in the slab. We've got the tree stump down here, and we've got column 9 AA here, bent and bowed. It kind of looks funny in this, I'll tell you why. And then we've got the fuselage, the tube, the passenger tube here. I've highlighted it with red. This is where the red is, that lines up with all the other data points. And we'll notice that the first floor column 14AA is missing. This was hit by the lower aircraft structure. We also will notice, as other people have pointed out, that the second floor column 14AA is still in place, and it was hit by the aluminum hollow shell of the plane, this particular area. I'm not sure that that's what destroyed these two window panels. It probably didn't help, but it's still there. So let's talk about the yaw motion of the impact sequence. You know, what I did is I said, you know, I'm an airplane. I'm going to go hit a couple of things. Going back to basic engineering physics or engineering mechanics, so what's going to happen to this free body? So what we had is the 100-ton plane hitting a 20-ton or 40-ton trailer and moving it. So there's going to become some yaw motion. The plane's going to start to twist in the air, some yaw motion. And we're approaching the tree in front of column 16. I'm going to hit it halfway between the fuselage and the right engine. The right engine's going to also impact, or the right wing's going to impact at column 18. The tree has now been slammed against the Pentagon facade. Here's the right wing pivot sequence. The red arrow shows the forces that's being pushed towards the inside of the building, but can't go very far because of it's up against the concrete slab. And as it pivots around, it has those forces that pushes it towards the south. Here's where the tree has hit the Pentagon at column 13. As it's hit it here at column 13, it's created a lot of vibrations, a lot of energy. And if you've ever chopped down a tree and watched them fall down, there's a lot of energy in a tree falling or getting pushed or whatever. So it added a lot of energy to this particular location. My hypothesis is that it broke loose the two window frames in this area. And then the tree continues tearing through the fuselage, and it's dragging through some of the larger aluminum shell components that are seen on the lawn, as well as the overhead luggage rack. And then we hit column 9AA, and then we watch the column 9A. Notice that in each of these wings, there's a rear structure. There's not just a leading wing spar, there's a rear spar. And it will keep everything more or less together as it's flowing getting dragged and rotated around these things. And then the tail's going to continue going in, and it hits about column 12 and does damage between 11 and 13, which we'll talk about here. So this is Will Morris's photo, and what we see is the northern end here. We're going to zoom in, and what we have here are the two windows from column 13 on the right to column 15 in the middle of the two windows to column 13, 12, and 11, sorry. And you can see all of the bricks have kind of fallen out, and down below, I've shown what a beam looks like on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side, the beam and the bricks under the window have all fallen away. The thing in the back looks like it's just the Kevlar backing that you would have seen in the very first couple of slides. The size of the hole is one of the misconceptions. When I was first told that there was a 90-foot hole, I went into tilt mode. This was probably about 2010 or 11. I couldn't just fathom it because all my 9/11 videos said it was an 18-foot hole. So what we're seeing here is one of the photos that's going to be used to make a composite, so we can take a look at it a little closer. But it needs a little explanation. So here I've got column 9AA and column 9A shown in this angle photo. You're probably about 45, 50 degrees south as this picture is being taken. If you only highlight it in this particular little section, this is what's going to be carried into the composite photo. And here's the composite photo, in which you have column 9AA and column 9A. And those are the ones that were used to make this composite, to show that there's really nothing from column 9AA over, except it looks like column 9. You know how long it took me to figure out that this was column 9A and not column 10? You know, a long time. And so I can really understand just how difficult it is for most people to get their hands around it because there's so much bad stuff that's inaccurate material that's out there. But I've looked at this, and this is, you know, again, if you find an error in what I talk about, let me know. It's the worst thing you can do for me is tell me that I made an error. And of course, I'll do my best. I'll do my best to correct it and acknowledge it. So this is the photograph that was used to support the 18-foot opening. In reality, we've got this 100-foot opening, 100-foot missing facade, 90 feet of continuous opening of the columns. There's still some stuff that's hanging down, as you can see by the highlighted orange. We'll talk about those. They were hypothesized by some to come out of the ground and be exploded outwards. But if they did that, they would start right where they're located here, which is not a very appropriate place for columns to be, because then that would mean that they would go straight up from there. And it would do two things. It would go through the middle of the windows. And secondly, it would mess up the columns every 10 feet, which is what all the engineering documents show. So it doesn't look like, it looks like they're actually hanging. And here's a photo of column 16, the largest of those, that is shown from the right-hand side, from about a straight on, and from the left-hand side, from one of the two video cameras video that was taken right after 9/11 by amateurs. So you can actually see it from all the different angles, and it's hanging. There is a similar column 10A. I mentioned I talked about this one. This one's hanging. It's been severed at the bottom. It's at this angle. This is what it kind of looks like, the arc of it is. And if it had been standing straight up and down, unsevered, it would look something like it would be in this location, but that's not where it is. So this is very similar to the column 16 that we were just talking about. And if you go take a look at columns inside the Pentagon, you take a look at the photos, take a look at some of the interior videos, you'll see that there are columns that are just like this one inside. So there's no intact columns visible anywhere. You can change the contrast, the coloring, all this stuff of this particular photo, and you won't see anything except fires on the inside. There's no columns that are visible that would be seen. And if you look from the north end again, what you see is, we can look very closely. We can see that there are no columns. You can actually see the Benton Bode column 9AA, and I'll just show you that. You can actually see it here, arcing in, coming on out. And so there's no column 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13 is pretty hard to see, but in this particular area, that's a good part of the opening. There's no columns that are shown there. And these are the burning tree branches. They're not exploded out rebar or anything like that. So you can actually see that the trees are still there after the fire's been put out in some of the photos, and you see that, yes, tree branches. So now let's go take a look at the C-ring exit hole. The first two floors of the Pentagon are continuous from the E-ring entrance hole to the C-ring exit hole with only an array of columns in between. This video has been used since the earliest days. It's the Purdue University simulation of the Pentagon. It's the first floor, and in some of the first ones that I've seen, they would say that this is. They would say, see, it didn't even get through the E-ring before being destroyed. Well, this is actually the E-ring to the C-ring. And there's no walls. There's no walls between this. This is all the continuous columns from the Purdue University, from E-ring, outer ring to the C-ring inner wall. Here's another viewpoint of it. The plane's coming in. It's going to be hitting these columns, knocking them down. They're color-coded to show what kind of damage they have. I'm going to zoom in on just 4 of them. I've labeled them. There's 11E, which is basically, it's almost a fine column. It's green. It means it's still functional. 11D says, this is bent and bowed. And then we have 9C, which is also bent and bowed, and is blue. And then we have 9B, which is red, like this is a dead one, dead column. So what we have here is 11E off here. It is intact, damaged, but intact, vertical, no deformations. 11D is bent and bowed, not supporting much, but it's in fact still there. It resisted the impacting mass, whatever it is. Here's 9C, another bent and bowed. In column 9, the remnants is here is just a skeleton of the rebar. The concrete's all been knocked off, and a lot of the concrete didn't get knocked off during the impact. A lot of it's doing the firefighting, hit hot concrete with a fire hose, and it forget the word for it, but the concrete falls off. Prior analysis had misused the ASCE report, which had color-coded the columns and made them big so you could see them. And that led to people saying, well, there's no way you can get anything through these columns. But if you draw them to scale, this is what they look like. You can actually get 3 paths in there from this is from the column, from the E-ring out to the C-ring. And if you actually do a graphical analysis, you can see that there are 3 paths, 1.1 feet, 2.5 feet, and 2.3 feet. And I validated this with the wheelbarrow between some of the columns. Once the material could have traveled through those 3 paths, through those 3 channels, it would have impacted the C-ring wall, and some of the material out here it comes from the plane. I'm highlighting the wheel hub. We've seen pictures of this in some of the other presentations. But how does this wheel hub and here's the tire. I mean, there's so many. I don't have the best pictures for the tire, but that's a piece of the tire. So if we go take a look, where are these things stowed? Right in the center line of the plane. And these are the same wheel hub designs as we just saw in the debris pile in the AE drive. The wall is only 2 bricks thick. It's an unreinforced wall that's just 2 bricks thick. And so it didn't take very much to knock it down. It is 19 feet wide by 10 feet high. So once it starts to crumble or have a piece of it knocked out, a lot of it, I guess, is going to fall. And that's what you see. And here's another picture. If you look on the right-hand side, again, you can see the 2 bricks, and you can see the plaster mesh behind it. So let's take a look at a piece of the damage, the airplane wreckage. We have a leading wing slat. If you've ever watched the plane take off, you'll see that they'll have a leading wing slat to make the wing bigger and longer, and it extends out. And it has this shape that you see here. I've highlighted with the yellow, and it's got an extension bar to kind of control it. And here's the leading wing slat that was found on the lawn. It's photographed here on the lawn, halfway between the. I've circled here where it was photographed. It fell off someplace between the light pole number 3 and the impact point on the wall. It's possible that it could have been moved from someplace, but it definitely was before it actually would have gone inside the building. So there's also light aircraft debris that is been seen everywhere, and it's been dispersed. And I want to talk about one of the areas where I get a lot of pushback from. It's called a trailing air mass. So I just want to go through a little basic physics, and it's like if you move a plane, if you move anything, it pushes the air out of the way, and air has to come back in. And if you're traveling at 200 miles an hour, 400 miles, 500 miles, up to the speed of sound, I guess, the air is going to be coming in at that same velocity right behind the object. So as the plane is approaching, it is dragging along this air mass. As the plane impacts and goes into the building, some of the air tries to follow in. There are many accounts of people inside the building talking about the winds. Now, high explosives create huge pressure waves that do the damage. They don't create winds. But people talk about winds, holding up their hands to stop a door coming at them, or a whiteboard coming at them, coming across the room, things like that. They talked about the wind. And that is this air that had followed the plane in, pressurized the building, and but on the outside, not all of it can get in there, so it goes up and over, carrying debris up into the courtyards and other places around the Pentagon, and to the north. A lot of the trailing air mass seemed to have gone to the north, and that's what dragged a lot of the debris. The trees, the branches, the light debris that was seen north of the heliport, on the heliport. There's even some large security cameras both record a funny red dot coming across behind the firehouse and landing in basically the eddy. And if you take a look, it's one of the large pieces of the fuselage. And so how would it be traveling in that pattern to end up there? It would be being pushed by a trailing air mass that had no place to go. So is this real, or am I just like nuts? Don't answer that. So we have the trailing air mass behind a C-130. So here we have a C-130 that's flying around, having a good time. It's got the back door open here. This is for people to, paratroopers to jump out of, do cargo drops, things like that. But these two crew members are having a good time. They're riding around, taking in the sights, and they're not subjected to the 200 miles an hour or so of wind speed that is outside everywhere else. They're in an eddy, and behind here the air is going the same speed as the plane. Having a good time, like I said, smiling. Now we're going to see something not so smiley. This is a B-52 just prior to crashing, 1994 in Alaska. He's going to crash. There's a trailing air mass behind him. As he comes down, the air mass will push the burning materials to the left. It's going to keep the fireball down. It's pushing it, keeping it down. It's pushing it, keeping it down, and now it's starting to dissipate. And once the trailing air mass is out of the way, now the heat can, there's nothing to push it out of the way or keep it down. It now erupts and goes up. Another issue with internally planted explosives and how it would affect the debris is if there were internal or external explosives used, the material would scatter out uniformly in front of the opening, but that's not where we see the debris. And so only a large plane impact can create the significant air movement that would cause this trailing air mass that would disperse the debris. And a plane is the only source of this traveling air mass. There was no significant winds on 9/11. Nothing else is capable of creating such a large movement on an otherwise calm and windless September day. So it must be the local effects of this trailing air mass that a large plane impact would have done. No other explanation fits this observation. And I guess that concludes my talk, and I again welcome comments and corrections to any of my observations. Thank you very much.